Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Cam, and welcome back to the 1996 Project. Thankfully, this time around, I don't have to review two movies that are straight up garbage. There's some good ones in this batch this week, thank God. But to kick things off, is going to be a very special one. It pretty much, it played a part in mainstreaming a guy named Robert Rodriguez, gave a face to the guy Quentin Tarantino. He had been in things, but this was a starring vehicle for him. Everyone was introduced to a guy named George Clooney, who wasn't watching ER. Oh, and vampires were there. From Dusk Till Dawn.
To slavery.
No thanks. I already had a wife.
From Dusk Till Dawn.
From Dusk Till Dawn was directed by Robert Rodriguez, who would go on to direct Spy Kids movies. He had directed El Mariachi and Once Upon a Time in Mexico. He had been around, but this is his big coming out, if you will. And here to talk with me about that is a frequent guest on the channel. I've always loved talking movies with him. Is Austin Pez Howell. Pez, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic, Jacob. No, thank you for having me as always, man. Always fun to talk movies with you.
Yeah, From Dusk Till Dawn celebrating 30 years, which is just crazy to think about. And thinking about this movie, it's like Rodriguez, Clooney, Tarantino, Keitel, even though he was a name, and like you go down the list, you have this like cross section of names that were a big deal or were about to become a big deal, like in this movie somewhere, and it's just fantastic.
Or even throws back to the past, like when you go through the movie and you get people like Tom Savini showing up. You get Fred the Hammer Williamson, who was like a blaxploitation kind of star, actually getting a more prominent role than you might think. Once again, giving a nice prominent role to like Danny Trejo, giving Cheech Marin 3 different distinct roles to play in this movie. You could tell Rodriguez, appreciated his character actors, his fellow Hispanic actors. And yeah, he has a real knack. I think what's unique about this movie is, not only is it a vampire horror movie, but he does a great job combining that with the action and with the crime film that kind of the first half is with. It's one of the more famous movies that does a complete 180 about halfway through the runtime. And you either kind of roll with it or you don't, but luckily I do.
We will get to that. But the basic premise, without going too deep into spoilers yet, is a pair of brothers named Seth and Richard Gecko, played by George Clooney and Quentin Tarantino, have robbed a bank and they're on their way to Mexico to freedom. They kidnap a family in an RV, played by Harvey Keitel and Juliette Lewis and Ernest Liu or Liu. I'm going with Ernest Liu. But they're going to the border, but they stop off at a bar called the Titty Twister because the 90s. And inside the bar is Tom Savini, whose character's name is Sex Machine, an incredibly sexy Salma Hayek who does a big old dance routine, and next thing you know, vampires.
Yes.
Completely apropos of nothing, but you don't question it because it, like you said, Pez, it's one of those things where it just completely turns on itself at the dance number. And then it like goes from, okay, Salma Hayek, okay, we're here, we're doing good, and oh, she looks like that. Okay.
But it was one of the great things where I was too young to see this movie in the theaters in 1996. I didn't come to the movie till probably, my early 2000s days of browsing and renting everything in the horror section of my local Blockbuster. Yes, kids, there was a place called Blockbuster where you rented videos, and I burned through the horror section from about 2001 to 2004. But yeah, I wish I could have been in the theater, to see this movie and experience that turn, when it does take that turn, because going up to that point, and we can kind of talk about the first half a little bit. I mean, it really does feel like a Tarantino-esque, and that makes sense because he wrote the movie, and he's in the movie. Just kind of a crime, thriller, to a degree. And you have these brothers, and to his credit, George Clooney really presents himself as the movie star we would come to know him, beyond this, that he would kind of become in the late 90s and the early 2000s. And I really think he has a screen presence that kind of jumps right off the screen. And even to a degree, this is slightly off top, Jacob, but you'll see where I'm going with this. being in 1996, if you saw this movie and you saw how cool he is as Seth Gecko and how charismatic he is and how badass he is, you can see
Mhm.
why somebody said, "Hey, Batman, maybe."
Yeah,
I mean, dude has a strong chin, good-looking guy, suave guy, charismatic guy, badass. In this movie, you can see why they happen. I'm just saying, you can see it, for what it is.
I have a soft spot for Batman and Robin. I've talked about it tons here on the channel. I
Right.
recognize that it's bad and no one likes it, but I've always had a pronounced like it's fun. Like it's
I've seen it
fun.
about 900 times because I had it on VHS, in the 90s. So like I have that movie burned into my brain. And I just look, to me, at least they put a button on it on the Flash and made a kind of a punchline out of it at the end of that movie. So, and put like kind of a final stamp on it of like, yes, we acknowledge you, and here's your kind of, punchline of like, all right, yeah, I played Batman, it didn't go so well, but here's my nod to it. That's fine.
If the Flash had to exist, at least it existed for that reason.
Right.
But to your point, Clooney is
Yes.
great here. Like I said, he was just known as the ER guy here, and
Right.
with 30 years of hindsight, 2 Oscars, the Ocean's movies, like he's a name. Like he's a very famous name. He's still going. He just did Jay Kelly, which I have not seen, but I've heard very good things. So
Yes.
he's still kicking around. But here, this was like not his first movie. I think it was a Killer Tomato movie where he
No,
said,
he was in he started out in horror, like and so he's not a stranger to horror, because I have a theory, Jacob, that almost every A-list actor started out in some horror movie.
yeah,
And you can track it across the thing. I mean, DiCaprio had Critters 3, Jennifer Aniston had Leprechaun. They all do a horror movie, and he had actually done several. He had done Grizzly 2, which wasn't released for the longest time, but now it's on Tubi with some added stock footage to stretch out the runtime and make it a real movie. But it was lost to history for the longest time. He was in one of the Nukem High movies, I think like Return to Nukem High or something like that, like 84. And then he was also in Return of the Killer Tomatoes with him and like John Aston, which I've seen that movie as well. So he's no stranger to horror. And yeah, he was just a struggling kind of working actor, just getting roles wherever he could. He was on The Facts of Life, in the 80s, the sitcom. So, he was working and he was doing his thing. But yeah, ER was his big kind of jump in like the around 95 or so. And yeah, this was, I think, his real big coming out party as far as like the big screen, and obviously that would lead into Batman Robin, a major franchise.
Then you got Quentin Tarantino, who, I mean, he had already done Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, so he was out there and about. And nowadays, people aren't such big fans, like Paul Dano and Matthew Lillard catching
Right.
strays for no discernible
For no
reason.
reason. It's like, what did I do to you, bro? Like, I've never even worked with you.
But up till From Dusk Till Dawn, in terms of acting, Tarantino was known for his brief role in Reservoir Dogs and the scene where he like just rants about coffee. So,
Yes.
but here he gives himself more of a role.
And doing a random Top Gun rant and From Destiny Turns on the radio about Top Gun being like a real like a homosexual odyssey, essentially. So but that's from 95 as well. But it's like kind of a one scene type of thing. But yeah, he wasn't really known for his acting. He's fine in each of those movies. He's not really like a standout. But I might actually contend this might be his best acting role he ever did in this movie, because I actually think the script plays into how kind of a weirdo he is anyways, because his Gecko brother character is like he's a total psycho. He's kind of a sociopath. He's hearing voices in his head clearly. He makes other people uncomfortable. He's socially awkward. Seth is the only one that kind of gets him, but he lies all the time, and he has delusions. But I actually think he plays that role quite well, and he does the psychopath like very well. So yeah, I would contend it's his best acting role he's ever done, actually.
There's a clear distinction between the brothers, and I think that dynamic just bounces off really well. And it's a pretty compelling movie up to the part with the vampires. It's not like a case of, come on, when's it gonna get here? Because I imagine Tarantino was like, I gotta make this interesting up to the big reveal. So like you got the Geckos who are trying to escape. You got Harvey Keitel, who is a preacher, but he is on the lam with his faith. You got
Yes.
Juliette Lewis. You got Ernest Liu. So you got stuff going on, and it's all compelling.
Yeah, no, totally. And you could see, and that's the testament to what a great movie is if you even took the horror out of the movie. As we talked about Night of the Creeps, if you remember our Night of the Creeps review, where I could have watched a whole movie of just those two buddies like having a college adventure, you know what I mean? Even without the horror. And I think it's a testament to this movie that you could watch a whole movie of just these brothers trying to escape the law and, get to Mexico and, meet up with their rendezvous and whatnot. And it would still be compelling. There's still good bits of tension. The border checkpoint scene is a good bit of tension where they're hiding in the shower of the RV and whatnot. You're seeing if Harvey Keitel is going to give them away. But what I like about the dynamic, especially between Seth Gecko and Jacob Fuller, the Harvey Keitel character, is their back and forth of like, he doesn't respect the Gecko brothers, obviously, because they're taking them hostage and whatnot. But I think he knows to a degree that at least the Seth end of the brothers has sort of a code of honor. Like, if you notice in most of the movie, Richie is the one that goes off the deep end and shoots people and kind of, and does the horrific things in the movie. Seth is the one that kind of just wants to get to the objective, and he doesn't really want to kill people. He'll rob people and whatnot, but he doesn't want to he's not a murderer, I don't think, to a degree. He'll defend himself, but I don't think so. When he's talking to Keitel about, hey, look, we get this job done, dude, I will let you guys go. You have my word. I think he believes him to a degree. And I kind of believe him even as an audience member. I think he's a man of his word too, in a sense.
I couldn't agree with you more there. And there's just like, you get the sense that Richie would have gone off the deep end long ago, if not for Seth. So
yes.
there's a good sense of that there without having to have it painstakingly explained so that the point gets across.
But he only puts up with Richie because he's his brother. You get the distinct feeling of that as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then it gets up to where we get to the titty twister and everything goes down there. And it's what you think it is, it's all of that and then some and more. Like, if Tarantino directed a vampire movie, this would probably be it.
Right.
Like it just blood everywhere. Just, I can't properly describe it. You would just have to watch it.
No, it's just carnage candy. Not before we also get a nice bit of Tarantino's foot fetish, drinking beer off of Selma Hayek's toes as well, which was his idea, either on the day of or in the script, who knows. But yeah, the titty twister even in itself has a really cool vibe to it. It's got this Aztec-y kind of, building structure, sort of old-timey thing. But you go in there and something's kind of off. You're like, wow, how does this place exist? How does nobody other than these select people know about it? So you feel like something's weird, but it could also just be it's this off the beaten path, bar for crazy truckers and crazy prostitution and whatever else is going on in that place, all sorts of debauchery. But that's where you get again, you get Danny Trejo as the bartender, as I think he's like Razor Charlie or something like that. You have this wild band playing, the Salma Hayek, the more Cheech Marin, but that's where everything goes down, because that's where it also introduced to Tom Savini as a sex machine who has a literal cock gun that pops out of his, it's ridiculous. Fred the Hammer, ends up, sticking around for what I do like is that those two guys stick around for a little while. Like, you actually get some characters that kind of are also badass who kind of survive the initial wave, and kind of team up with everybody. And they're able to kind of defend themselves. So I like that there's this kind of little band of survivors beyond just kind of our core characters, and you get a few other interesting characters as well.
You also have, along with Tom Savini, another effects legend in Greg Nicotero, who plays his friend and does the stunts for the movie. So that's if you're knowledgeable on who does what in certain genres, then you see Greg Nicotero and oh, there he is. That's nice. And then like I said, it just goes completely pear-shaped as soon as Salma Hayek shows up. And then just the best line of the movie was welcome to slavery. Is I've been married bang, just great stuff.
There's all kinds of great lines in this movie, even in the first half. Just to throw out to a few of them, where he's telling the lady they picked up, don't try to escape because I have 6 friends that all run faster than you, referring to his gun and his bullets. Like there's like little lines, throughout the whole thing, that are just a lot of fun. Telling everybody, to be cool and whatnot, all that stuff. Again, Clooney kind of oozes charisma every time he drops one of those lines, which in any other hands could be really, really cheesy and bad if you didn't have the right sort of movie star, I think, delivering those types of badass lines. But again, he pulls off the look and he pulls off the badassery. I think it works. And the nice mix of Harvey Keitel kind of discovering his faith, blessing the water and kind of, tapping into his old tricks, as a priest, and them having to use that a little bit. And you even get some heartfelt moments, Jacob, the stuff where he gets bitten and, he's kind of turning and he's asking them to, do what they have to do to him, eventually. And Clooney has to put down his brother, there are like legitimate, like emotional moments for these characters that we kind of just met not that long ago that still work.
Yes. One big thing that I wanted to touch on you before I wrap this portion of this video up.
Mm-hmm.
What is your thoughts on and I haven't I was talking to my friend and Talking Gotham co-host Jacob Collins, and he has a theory that this movie, like the movie Sinners that we got last year, is the Southern version of this. I'm not going to say it's a complete copy, but I'm just saying because let me preface: Sinners is awesome, one of the best movies of last year. Go and see it if you haven't. But there's a lot of similarities, and I'll just leave it at that.
No, I think you could make that case, that Sinners is Ryan Coogler's version of From Dusk Till Dawn, but in more of a period piece, sort of bluesy, deep South, sort of a version. And hey, maybe Rodriguez's version was the Hispanic, heritage version with all the Hispanic actors he casts in it, and it being set in Mexico and whatnot. And Coogler instead sets it in the deep South, and with the primarily African American cast and kind of with blues music, instead of kind of this, almost like Spanish rock, sort of stuff. Maybe they're just both throwing back to, the heritage and what they like. You can't ignore the fact that, Sinners is also a movie that is mostly kind of a drama, with a little bit of thriller elements that then, does a 180 and becomes a vampire horror movie, Splatterfest at the end of it. You can't ignore that.
As soon as Haley Steinfeld shows up, and then it's like, oh, the movie just took a complete 180.
Yeah, another sexy, lady who does like a sexy dance and then becomes, that sort of thing. So, you can't ignore the similarities that they are there. But at the same time, it's hardly any horror movies are super original. You can throw back anything to anything. There's always going to be influences. I'm sure Ryan Coogler is a fan of From Dusk Till Dawn. I would not be surprised if you asked him. He probably is. But I think he put enough of his own spin and twist on it, that I don't think it's like a direct copy or anything like that. But you can see the influence there for sure.
And I'm not trying to say it's a copy either.
Of course not.
As soon as I heard Collins say is like, oh, it's the Southern version of Dusk Till Dawn, I'm like, is it? And then I was rewatching it for this. I'm like,
kinda.
If you squint, it's like there's definitely ideas that are similar, but no, it's not a direct copy. If anything, they took this basic template and they gave it their own twist. Like you said, this is the more Spanish tribute to that kind of movie, like the blaxploitation, that kind of style. And Sinners is more of Ryan Coogler's spin on it. So they're similar, but they're also so different that the similarities, if any, are just.
Although they do have 2 brothers in the lead roles that are kind of anti-hero brothers. So the more you think about it and break it down, it is.
That is.
There's some deeper similarities.
One of them does go crazy, so.
And they do go crazy during a musical sequence, and there's then okay. No, there is some similarities here and there.
It's one of those Bart Simpson really makes you think kind of.
Makes you think,
But to put the period at the end of the sentence from Dusk Till Dawn, I'm giving this an amazing grade. It's aged tremendously well. Like, it's just a great, fun little like horror action movie. Clooney, Tarantino, they're both awesome. This whole cast is just great. Like, it's a deep bench too. Like I said, Clooney, Tarantino, Keitel, Juliette Lewis, Salma Hayek, like I mentioned, Cheech Marin plays three roles, all great. Young Danny Trejo is in here. He's great.
You get John Hawkes at the beginning. You get Michael Parks at the beginning, both in the kind of convenience store sequence. John Saxon pops up for a cameo on TV. Almost everybody that pops up in this movie is somebody you know, like somebody you'll recognize.
More often than not, yes. But it's one of those movies that just, if you look at it and you look 30 years down the road, you're like, this movie kind of made a lot of guys, if you really think about it.
For sure. No, I think it's very, very entertaining. I think it's held up very well. There's a lot of practical effects work, which I always appreciate, good practical stuff. There's a little bit of CGI that's dated here and there. Some of the transformation that they do quickly. There's some kind of wonky CGI with some of the bats and things like that. But again, for the most part, there are a lot of people running around with practical makeup effects and whatnot. I love the stuff when Tom Savini becomes a vampire. He kind of blows up a little bit. Same with Fred Williams, and they kind of get bigger to a degree. And there's some good stuff there. But yeah, very entertaining. I think it moves right along. It doesn't take up much of your time. It's like 95 minutes or something like that. I mean, it speeds right along. You're invested in everything from start to finish. It's always been a fun kind of 90s favorite. And a quick shout out, Jacob, as well, to Robert Rodriguez's follow-up to this, one of my favorite horror movies of all time, The Faculty, which I love. The Faculty. Love The Faculty. One of my favorites of all time, and kind of the post-Scream era, kind of a post-Scream version of Body Snatchers, which I very much appreciate. I love Body Snatchers. But yeah, no,
get jacked.
Yes. So yeah, he made two really great ones in the late 90s here. So no, it holds up. If you never go back and watch it, it's worth your time. And yeah, even worth just seeing like a young Clooney and some of these stars in here and some really good roles. So well written, well directed, and a ton of fun.
Also, bonus fun fact, this movie actually spawned 2 sequels. I have not seen them. I have not heard good things from
one of them. Has Robert Patrick. I saw it a long time ago. I don't remember much about it, and I've never seen the third one. It's like Texas Blood Money or something like that. I've never seen the third one. I did not see either. I know they had a short-lived TV series. I think went like 2 seasons or something. If you remember that, there was one on Robert Rodriguez and his network that he had for a little while. His TV, yeah, the El Rey network. They had a From Dusk Till Dawn TV show where they kind of expanded on the Gecko brothers.
I used to watch Underground on that network.
Right.
I saw promos for that all the time.
Yeah, so I never actually saw the TV show. I actually heard decent things. I heard the show was actually okay, and kind of again, it's just more of the adventures of the Gecko brothers, kind of in their hijinks, their bank robberies and whatnot. And I think it eventually gets to like a reimagining of the vampire stuff, like near the end or something like that. Again, I've never seen it, but I heard decent things. But yeah, those direct-to-DVD sequels are not great, so I would steer far away from those.
But what did you all think of From Dusk Till Dawn? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to read what you have to say. And Pez, thank you so much for joining me. You are a busy man, so whenever I can get you, sure. it's always appreciated. You are over at the Movie Hero Network, keeping it down as always. What do you got coming up?
Yeah, no, we're over on the Movie Hero Network. We have a Facebook group for that, as well as our YouTube channel. And we are right in the middle of our 2025 wrap-up shenanigans. We did a podcast league now of the worst movies of 2025, which I hosted. We just did an honorable mention show where we kind of shouted out some other movies we loved. We're building up to our top 12 roundtable discussion of the year, and we're also right in the middle of our 2025 3-part tournament where we put 128 2025 movies in a 3-part tournament bracket. So we're doing all kinds of 2025 stuff right now. So come over and join us. We're having a lot of fun over there.
All the links down below. Subscribe to them over there. And then this is where Pez gets off on this video, like gets off of talking about the 96 movies. But I must continue, and now I must take a hard left in terms of tone and general quality. It's time for me to talk about Angels and Insects.
Being used.
No! Angels and Insects.
Angels and Insects was directed by Philip Haas and starred Mark Rylance and Kristen Scott Thomas. It tells the story of a man who is a bug expert and a biologist, played by Mark Rylance, who is writing a book on his recent expedition to the Amazon. He stays at a very wealthy house in Victorian England and falls in love with the family's daughter. However, the family holds a bit of a secret. A big secret. And I'll just be frank, this one was not very good. This one was just, it was boring, and then something happens near the end that just made me turn off of the movie entirely. And I like Mark Rylance. I think he's actually a good actor, like in movies like Bridge of Spies and Dunkirk. Like, he's excellent in Dunkirk. But here, he's just kind of there, really. And thankfully, he's gotten a bit of a career resurgence. So good for him. Kristen Scott Thomas is good, but she's been better in much better things. And just, I struggle to remember anything about this. It's just a bunch of people talking in rooms in stuffy clothes, saying how much they love each other, but they can't. It's just too much. And just, I wasn't a fan. But then it's revealed that the family has incest running through them. And I was just like, turn you off. And I didn't, but I was extremely tempted to, because that just gross. This movie's horrid, and I am not ashamed to admit that it is very horrid and a very boring and just bad movie all around. But thankfully, breath of fresh air. Let's get on to Bed of Roses.
But if you hurt her, I'll kill you. Okay?
Okay.
Bed of Roses was directed by Michael Wright. Bed of Roses was directed by Michael Goldenberg and starred Christian Slater and Mary Stuart Masterson. It tells the story of a flower delivery boy played by Christian Slater who finds a woman in a window and falls in love. Shooting his shot, he leaves an anonymous bouquet of flowers for her and eventually reveals himself to be the one to give her the gift. She is flattered, and so in turn they create a relationship and they fall in love. I go into most of these 96 movies with no knowledge whatsoever and haven't watched a trailer or anything of the sort. This was one of the blind spots for me, and you know what? This one was actually more than solid. I actually really liked this one. And I watched this before Angels and Insects, so it was not a case of, oh, I was just thankful for something that was a little bit better. But it was legitimately like a very nice little movie and sweet, and it actually made me feel something, and I just liked that. Christian Slater's really good here. I thought he was the best part. Mary Stuart Masterson is good as well. She has a lot of trauma going on, but it's not like all of like in your face, like just lathered on for all to see. Like, it's done through subtle means, and I liked that. I liked the spirit of that. There's even a very young Josh Brolin in this movie, which took me by surprise. I don't know, maybe I'm just so used to Thanos and No Country for Old Men that whenever I see young Josh Brolin, I'm like, who are you? But it's Josh Brolin, and he's great here. It definitely falls into more of the the romantic movies that you've definitely seen. It doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it is good at its job. It doesn't overstay its welcome. And overall, I'm giving this a good rating, but a high good rating. I do give this one a big recommendation. It's one that's off the radar, but one that I do recommend. But next up, another recommendation, and one that I didn't really think I would recommend, but here we are. It's Once Upon a Time When We Were Colored.
You can be anything you wants to be. Learn how to draw buildings or be a doctor.
In the unforgettable saga of an American family. Once Upon a Time When We Were Colored.
Once Upon a Time When We Were Colored was directed by Tim Reed and starred Al Freeman Jr., Felicia Rashad, and Isaac Hayes, among others. It tells the story of a family growing up in what is called a colored town. Their words, not mine. And it tells the story over several years of a young boy growing up in this town, and from the late 30s up to the beginning of the civil rights movement and everything in between. This was actually a very pleasant surprise. I did not expect to like this as much as I did, but I did. It's very much a slice of life movie in that it bottles up a certain time period and shows you what it was like, unfortunately, for people of color during that era. It's unfortunate, but it was what it was. Strong performances all around. You got Al Freeman Jr., who is my favorite part. I thought he was great. Felicia Rashad, always solid. Then you got Isaac Hayes, who's just great in everything that he did, from Escape from New York up to here, just great. And just overall, not really a bad performance here. At parts, there's just some genuinely heartbreaking stuff, like when the colored town gets even more segregated, when white business owners are just straight up saying, I'm sorry, I can't buy ice from you anymore. Like, there was a point where they were freely, like, as grown adults, like, doing business with each other. And now it's just like, we can't, for obvious reasons. And it just sucks. Like, it sucks to see these people go through this, but it happened. And the movie doesn't really preach, for lack of a better word. It just is matter of fact. And I liked that approach here. You see these people grow up and evolve with the times. You see them happy despite everything. You see them very sad, and you feel sad for them. One of my favorite scenes is when the family is listening to a boxing fight with Joe Louis, who was a big time heavyweight boxing champion during that time, and he was African American. And when he loses the fight, they're just despondent, like he was their champion and he lost. And it's very sad to hear. But overall, I'm gonna give this a good rating, but a high good rating. There's definitely a lot of very enjoyable things here. On physical media, I couldn't find it, but I was able to find a rip on YouTube. But the YouTube one is very shoddy at best. There's parts of it where the audio legit cut out, and it wasn't my technology. It was just, you couldn't hear what the people were saying. So hunt down a better copy of this and watch it. But let's close things out by taking a look at, started off with one horror and bookending it with another horror. It's Screamers. Screamers was directed by Christian DeGay. I'm going with DeGay. And it stars Peter Weller, aka RoboCop himself, and it tells the story of a group of astronauts in the year 2078 who are occupying a mining colony on a planet called Sirius 6b. And there has been a war going on between corporations, and so it is up to the astronauts to find an enemy that has sprouted up on the planet, which turns out to be burrowing machinery. So this is one where it's sci-fi and horror, two of my favorite genres. However, sci-fi and horror sometimes just get very ugly very quickly. However, this is not one of them. This was a very pleasant surprise. Again, I really liked this one. Peter Weller, aka RoboCop himself, and the voice of Batman from The Dark Knight Returns is really good here. He gives a great, gruff, colonial marine performance. Just great, fantastic there. Jennifer Rubin's good here as well, but the star of the show absolutely is the effects. There's a lot of practical effects here. And I know that technically this movie came out in 95, but it came out in 96, but mid-90s CGI is dicey sometimes. I'll freely admit that. But here, when it's practical, it's great. And you just look at it and you see somebody built that. No one someone built that, and that's just great. That's so good. And then you got just how lived in everything feels. 2078, everyone's at war. It's a dark future, but it's done in a surprisingly good way, and I did like that. It definitely falls into sci-fi horror cliche land at times. Peter Weller has some very cheesy lines that he can't necessarily get over. But that doesn't stop the fact from being very enjoyable, and I'm going to give this a good rating, but a high good rating. So 3 in a row of differing movies and genres, but ultimately being very enjoyable and accomplishing what they were set out to do. But I pass it off to all of you. What did you think of any of the movies I talked about? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to read what you have to say. My name is Ryan Cam, and I'll see you in the next one.